Yo! JD here, and hopefully this short video today will help a lot of you out. So if you did like this video, please make sure you do give it a like. Let me know in the comments if it helped you and what you'd want to see next from me. I thought it'd be good to make a video on this topic because I feel like this is something that isn't really spoken about. I don't think I've really ever seen any other videos actually talking about this. Especially if you're running no assists, this is something you really do need to maximize, and that is how to be using the gears properly when you're playing F1. In this case, F1 25. Because by maximizing the gears, you will be doing quite a few things to the car. So first of all, you'll be helping the car slow down much more. So you're actually utilizing the engine braking. You'll be getting much more rotation. So if you go down the gears a little bit too slowly, you're going to be really kind of bogging the car down, and they're not going to be in a high RPM or high rev limiter. That is not going to allow the car to actually rotate. And also with the traction as well, if you're not going to be in the right gear, bogging the car down, or the opposite, in too much of a high RPM, you're either going to not get good acceleration, or you're going to get far too much wheel spin. And if it's on the high RPM, when you're trying to shift gear, it's going to be very problematic. So the first thing to talk about is how to actually shift properly. At the start of the race, you can afford to short shift, same under traction zones as well, where you're coming from a heavy braking zone, really slowing the car down, you're getting back on the power. In those scenarios, it's okay to short shift slightly. I've actually done a video talking about how to get the perfect start, so if you definitely want to check that out, I really do recommend it. But once you have got past that traction phase, I think it's very important to actually shift the car correctly. I used to be guilty of this myself on previous F1 games, but for this one and for the past few games now, what you really want to be focusing on is letting it get to 5 lights within the purple. Some people I coach, or a lot of people I coach, they tend to shift as soon as it turns purple, they just shift straight away. And it might not seem like a big deal, but if you're doing that for pretty much every single gear on every single track, you will actually be costing yourself a fair amount of time. So the way I like to do it, and definitely has worked the best for me and for other people, is when it gets to the 5 purple, let it be there, let it flash, bounce back at you temporarily, then you shift. That is where you are going to really maximize the gear. You're not going to be short shifting slightly. You're going to be hitting the next gear at a slightly lower RPM, which will then cause you a little bit of loss of momentum. So make sure you reach the 5 purple lights, let them flash briefly, and that is how you will be maximizing the gears. But I think the main thing to consider when it comes to manual gears is how you downshift, but more significantly, the tempo of the downshifting itself. So the way I like to describe this is that when I'm going into every single corner, I already know what the maximum gear I'm going to be when I get into that corner. I will also know what the lowest gear will be. So when I'm on the exit of the corner and I'm about to go on the power, that is going to be the lowest gear I'll be in. So once I get to the apex, what is that minimum gear I'm going to be doing? So before I go into every single corner, I always count down in my head how many downshifts I have to do, but with one very crucial element in mind. The gear that I will be using for the traction, once I'm fully off the brakes and starting to unwind the wheel, I often delay the final gear until the very last possible moment, just before when I'm about to apply the throttle. So all the gears before this, I actually shift down pretty quickly at equal distance apart. So you really want to do that. The reason why I do that is because you'll be maximizing the engine braking effect. With the engine braking, imagine if you're driving in your car, a manual car, going 50 miles an hour in 5th gear. If you put it down to 4th gear without any braking, it would automatically start to slow down. So that's literally what the engine brake is going to be doing. So if you go down the gears fairly quickly, you're going to be hitting the rev limiter of all those gears at pretty high. It's almost going to be maxing out. That is really going to enhance the engine braking effect. So this is effectively another brake, because there's many ways to slow the car down. You don't want to be relying just on the brakes itself. It's how you're releasing the brakes, it's how much you're turning to the corner. In this case, it's also how you are actually downshifting the gears itself. But I also delay the final gear into the apex, so I'm not too high of a rev range, so that when I go on the power, the traction is going to be much easier. If I shifted to the final gear too early, I'd either slow the car down too much through the engine braking, or if I try and then go on the power, the rev range or the RPM is going to be way too high, and this is going to make the traction really difficult, and then it'll be really wanting me to go into another gear, and when I do that, I'm automatically going to hit a very high RPM of that next gear, and quite often the car will snap on you and you'll actually lose it very, very easily. So the tempo is very important. So an example of this, and you'll see it on the screen here now, if I'm going to a corner like this in 7th gear as my highest, I know at the apex I'm going to be in 3rd gear at my absolute lowest when I go on the power. So the way I do this is I count in my head how many gears I have to go down, but with the crucial element like I just discussed, all the gears before that final gear, I want to go through those almost as quick as I possibly can. So in my head, I would need to count down 3 gears quite quickly and then delay the final one. So it'd be something like this. So if I'm going to this corner, it would be 1, 2, 3, and then 4 at the apex. And if you watch any of my footage, any of my videos, so whatever gear you're going to be using for the traction, make sure all the gears before that you're shifting relatively quickly, equal distance apart, but then you want to be delaying that final gear, that minimum gear you'll be using for the corner, delaying that until you hit the apex, have stopped turning fully in the corner, and you're about to apply the traction. So I hope this short video has helped you out. Let me know if it has. Let me know what you want to see next. Click the join button to access all my setups. Speak to me directly if any questions you have, and I will catch you very, very soon. Peace.